remember, as we work with rational expressions, that they are fractions. So when we multiply fractions, we multiply the top times the top and the bottom times the bottom, and then we cross-reduce where we can. So for example, if I was multiplying the rational expression x plus 4 over x minus 5 times x minus 5 over x plus 3, then what I want to do is go ahead and just multiply. My top is getting multiplied by the top and the bottom is getting multiplied by the bottom. At this point, if there's anything I can cancel, I will do that, and I can cancel when I have the same thing on top that I have on bottom. So I see that there is an x plus minus 5 on the top, there is an x minus 5 on the bottom, so I canceled those out. So my answer is going to be whatever I have left over. I have an x plus 4 left over on the top, I have an x minus 3 left over on the bottom. When I divide fractions, I do the same change flip, and then I multiply the same as I did above. So if I have the same two rational expressions, but now I'm dividing, I'm going to do my same change flip, which means my first rational expression is going to stay the same. I do nothing to that. I change my division sign to multiplication, and then I flip this. So what was in the denominator becomes the numerator, and what was in the numerator is going to become the denominator. So it's going to look like this. Now from here, I just multiply using the same steps I did it from above. I do top times top, so I do x plus 4 times x minus 3, and then I multiply bottom times bottom, x minus 5 times x minus 5. Now from here, I reduce if I can, which means I cancel anything that I see on the top that I also see on the bottom. Here, though, unfortunately, I don't have anything, so I'm just going to go ahead and multiply. So I'm going to multiply my binomial times binomial on the top and on the bottom. So when I do that for the top, I'm going to get x squared plus x minus 12. And on the bottom, that's going to turn into x squared minus 10x plus 25. Divide 10x squared minus 28x plus 16 over 2x minus 4 divided by 25x squared minus 25x plus 4 all over 5x squared minus 41x plus 8. Thinking back to the rules of dividing fractions, I have to do same, change, flip, which means my first rational expression is going to stay the same. I'm going to change division to multiplication, and then I'm going to flip this so that my denominator becomes my numerator, and my numerator is going to become my denominator. That's going to give me something that looks like this. From here, now I can go ahead and I can multiply. Thinking of my rules of multiplying fractions, I multiply my top and my top together, I multiply my bottom and my bottom together, and I can cross-reduce where necessary. In order for me to do this, what I want to do with these polynomials is factor as much as possible to see what factors are the same on the top and the bottom to cancel. So I'm going to take my 10x squared minus 28x plus 16. I see that all of these share a factor of 2. I'm going to pull that factor of 2 out front. My 2x minus 4 also has a factor of 2. I'm going to pull that out front. Over on the right, because I have a trinomial that has a leading coefficient greater than 1, I'm going to multiply my a term and my c term, so my 5 and my 8, to give me 40. I'm going to search for two values that multiply to give me 40, but when I add them together, it gives me negative 41. So I can think of negative 40 and negative 1. And then my 25x squared minus 25x plus 4, same concept. I'm going to take my a term and my c term, multiply those together to give me 100. I'm going to now think of two numbers that multiply to equal 100, but when I add them together, it gives me negative 25. So I can think of the numbers negative 20 and negative 5. So when I break this apart, I'm going to break my middle term, my x term, apart into my negative 40x and negative 1x, and then my negative 25x got broken apart into negative 20x minus 5x. I'm going to do factor by grouping for this process, and you can see I factored out here. When I do my factor by grouping process, I'm going to take the first two terms and put those inside a set of parentheses. I'm going to take my second two terms and put those inside a set of parentheses. And now I'm going to factor out what this first set has in common, what this second set has in common. I'm going to do the same thing with my denominator. Break those apart into two different binomials and factor out GCFs. When I factor out my GCFs, I get something that looks like this. I have a GCF of 5x that I got pulled out front here. Here this just has a GCF of -1 that got pulled out front. And my denominator, this has a GCF of 5x. I pulled that out front. Here's what's left over. And on my bottom, I have a GCF of -1. I pulled that out front. Here's what's left over. Over on my first rational expression, I have another trinomial with a leading coefficient that's greater than 1. So I broke this apart as well to do factor by grouping here. So my next step, I'm going to break this up into its two binomials and pull out the common factors. Here, what I'm going to do is pull out the common binomial factor that these two terms share. These both share the common binomial of x minus 8. On the denominator, these both share the common binomial of 5x minus 4. So in my next step, you can see I'm taking this one and I'm doing my factoring out my common factors. Here I factored out those common binomials. My next step, I'm going to factor out the common binomial here. Notice as I'm doing this with my first rational expression, I'm keeping this 2 that I had out front the whole entire time. And notice I'm not really touching my denominator anymore now that that 2 is factored out front. From here, what I can go ahead and do is look to see what do I have in common and what can be canceled out. If I have something on the top and also on the bottom, I can cancel it. So I saw that there was a 2 on top and a 2 on bottom. I canceled that out. I have an x minus 2 on top and x minus 2 on bottom. I canceled that out. I have a 5x minus 4 on the top. I have a 5x minus 4 on the bottom. Those get canceled. I have a 5x minus 1 on top. I have a 5x minus 1 on bottom. Those are going to get canceled. Whatever I have left is going to be my final answer. And for this problem, all I have left is a numerator of x minus 8. So my final answer is simply going to be x minus 8.